we talked a bit about how are the different cloud solutions available in the market, and we talked about why a company would need a data warehousing system. Now let's talk a bit about the actual process, no? Like how is a company or a team supposed to be able to go through the process of transforming the data and orchestrating this whole process?
When you have a lot of data, like a lot of different data sources in your data warehouse system, you need to kind of connect it to each other. You need to filter out like irregular events, like wrong data or wrong data points or canceled events, like canceled orders. But you also need to enrich other data points. And for that, you need a sometimes quite big process and quite big like workflow to make that happen. So it's not that easy sometimes to just say, I have 3 data sources, I connect those with each other, and then everything works and everything is fine. And so for that, what you do generally is having certain layers and having then also certain steps to combine that data. And this needs to be automated at the end.
Yeah, so importing raw data, for example, if you start with that, for example, there are a lot of possibilities you have, right? It depends for sure on the data warehouse, and it depends on the tool or on the data you want to have. Most of the tools you can get the data are mostly offering API, for example. So you can write a quick Python code, and get the data. So for example, there, I think our approach is to not really transform already the data in the Python code, maybe just putting a record timestamp in it or something, but that's it. And then we have it in the data warehouse, this really raw data, and then we transform it inside the data warehouse and have then at the end a table which you can analyze and visualize.
So to draw basically a picture again, you have all the data sources, you bring them inside your data warehouse, clean, without changing anything. You can add some important information, as Alex said, like a record timestamp. If we say we stream data inside the data warehouse, then sometimes, of course, it's important to know when the data was like hitting the database. But given the fact that we don't write everything on the fly and we would like to analyze everything on the fly, but we just would like to have that data streamed inside the database, there's no real need to do all the transformation part in real time. Because first of all, you don't need it in real time. Second of all, real time is normally way more complex and also way more expensive. So that's why we take the data as it is, bring it to the database. And then this whole process of like transforming the data is starting. So you have all the different data and you need to connect it to each other. And therefore you have a lot of different possibilities. You can, for example, like write queries inside your database to connect different tables, to filter out data, to enrich data. You can also use tools for that where you can easily drag and drop and do single operations. Like for example, connecting table 1 and table 2 could be one single operation. Where you could drag and drop table 1, table 2, and you say, hey, connect those 2 tables via a certain column in that case. You can do the same thing in an SQL query directly. So the question, which one of both like general solutions you are using really depends on you. So are you familiar with SQL? Are you really like happy to write a lot of SQL code? Or are you more the type or the guy who like would like to use a tool for that? And this is, I think, also the first question you have to answer for yourself. Because this defines also the whole later process of transforming, but also orchestrating the whole transform process.
Imagining that I'm in the process of setting up for the first time the data warehouse for my company or my organization, I'm taking from multiple tools, for example, all my marketing channels, all my operational data, and certain tools, like especially if how they're available in the market, they have, you get what you get, no? You You can make an API connection and you get all the columns of data that are available. Maybe if you have an in-house built system, you can set up the data as you want, but then you need to combine it, no? And then I think this is the more strategic question of how a company wants to build their own data strategy or their approach. Are they going to have a larger in-house team that is going to be in charge of not just building, but also maintaining everything? Are they going to go for a tool that is set up? Like you said, both have their benefits. I think it's also important to take into account that all these data sources that you use, especially that are open in the market, they're also changing, no? They're updating with time that comes, and maybe you build your own connection for a certain way, and you're going to need to update it hopefully in a few years, but sometimes quite short notice. And that's important to know if you're going to be building and maintaining it on your own, that you're going to be needing to react fast to that setup. No? But we talked already of setting up everything. And you mentioned, I think, the key word of that we need to make this automatic. No? Like how, I think this word, the verb is probably orchestrating, that is going to be happening this.
I would like to go one step back, because what you said was really, really interesting in terms of you cannot answer this question for every company or every individual, of course. But depending on how big your team is, and if you have no team at all, how big your experience and something like that is, you should find the right solution for you. And when you have no experience at all, it's of course better to take a tool where all of those steps you mentioned are basically combined. If you that sounds first of all super interesting. Why should I do something else when I have a tool which is doing everything? First of all, it's cost normally. Tools which are capable of doing everything and they do everything quite good, they are normally not the cheapest products on the market. So, and that's for good reason. So, but second of all, you mentioned that tools are changing over time. Your BI system should run over multiple years at the end. So, of course, that plays a dominant role in this decision. And if you go for a tool, you need to trust that tool quite good. And therefore, it's really a mix of what do I do myself, for what do I do, or do I use open source technologies, which is normally always a good way to go. And third of all, where do I use a tool? Because it takes a lot of steps and a lot of work away from me. I come to my goal way quicker than if I do everything myself, obviously. But maybe pay per month a little bit more of licensing fees and going a little bit more into the risk that things could change over time and I could not scale as I would like to.
Yeah. So we also have sometimes the problem, right? When for example, you want to get LinkedIn data, for example, then you have the possibility to use an already available information or importer you can choose and getting the data then to your data warehouse. But you can also write your own API, right? So there are disadvantages and advantages. So for example, it is already there importer you can use, and it's really easy to use, and you have your data maybe in some minutes. But you can also write your own importer, and then you really know what's going on with this data in your own API. You can change it dynamically, as Ricardo said, but maybe sometimes you have to react quickly because the API changes. So yeah, but these are things you have to mention and also to evaluate the cost and so on.
Yeah, maybe in some words about the threshold between doing it yourself or going for a tool. So both options are, first of all, very good options. Both coming with advantages and disadvantages, of course. And I think you need to know them. For example, a very big advantage of a tool you are using is that everything works and everything is settled. Let's take the example you use with the LinkedIn API, for example. Of course, I can code the API myself, but that also requires kind of maintenance in the future. So it could be that I stand up a certain morning. If it's my company and I'm the only one in the company and this stuff is not working today and tomorrow and the next days, I don't have that data, but maybe I don't have time to fix it like that. Or if it's a very big Facebook API and I have an agency and the agency is doing that, then of course I need to ask myself if I'm more happy to pay a regular price every month, which is maybe a little bit higher, or do I pay a one-time fee but then also have the risk that maybe something is changed in that API and then it needs to get fixed. And those different things need to be evaluated, need to be handled, and then there will come out a good solution. Yeah, but initially you talked about
we took the step back,
exactly.
And now we return to the step forward.
Now we go to orchestrating. Yeah, exactly. So the more single processes you use, or you write yourself, or the more different tools you're using, the higher the complexity is getting in terms of orchestrating. Mm-hmm. Let's go to our first example. Like, we use a tool which is capable of doing everything. They're normally also capable of orchestrating. Yeah. So that means you can create, set up certain jobs, and you tell the tool, I would like to run that every day, 6 a.m. So sounds easy. The tool is normally taken care of if you create certain transformation steps, which normally have a certain like priority or a certain like way from left to right, how they are connected to each other. Then of course the application is able to orchestrate it in a way that they say, this goes first, this goes second, this goes third. And when something happens in the middle, they usually also have a failover, which makes it super easy for you. So
besides the joining of tables and adding timestamps, some quick examples that you could give of this transformation. What does it mean, transforming the data?
Yeah, let's stay with our e-commerce example. So we talked about orders, we talked about products, we talked about customers. What we would like to have at the end is a very complex, or the very, let's say, broad model we can analyze. Yeah. That means if I'm analyzing orders, I would like to know what kind of products were inside those orders. Mm-hmm. Therefore, I need to combine orders and products. But maybe I'm also interested in where those products got shipped to. Therefore, I need a zip code, which is normally inside the customer information. When it comes to that, I have 3 tables, like 3 raw tables, which I need to connect. And then I need to make sure that certain information are not twice inside. Yeah. If I have an order and this order consists of 2 products, then I make out of 1 line 2 lines. And this is a complexity you need to take care of in your transformation part. Yeah. And this is then exactly where certain jobs are like getting created, and they do something with your data. And you need to take care that at the end, the data which is like visualized or going to your stakeholders is really representing the truth.
Yeah, so it's really important when you are already transforming your data, or you're still on it, that you really know what you want to visualize and what you want to show in the dashboard, for example. So, for example, we also had the case that we have a tracking on a website, and they push every second some events to our tables. And then we have to decide, okay, shall we do 1 entry per event, or shall we put it, for example, to say, okay, every day and every article, for example, is 1 line, and so on. So these are things you have to consider. And for that, it's really, really important that you evaluate what you want to visualize and what you want to show in the final report.
Which is probably a step you have to do before. We didn't talk about that, I guess, but of course you need to plan somehow how your analysis or your data warehouse maybe not looks like, but what are you going to do with that information? And so if we work together with our clients, we normally ask, what are you going to do? What are you going to analyze? What are typical business questions you have? So if you see the data warehouse as kind of a employee inside the organization which knows everything, so you need to ask yourself, what would you ask that person every day, and what would you like to know from him?
What else can be done during the orchestration process? Is it just a matter of making a sequence, or also having an overview of everything that is happening?
Coming back to the differentiation between doing it into an application or doing it yourself. Mm-hmm. If you do it yourself, it's quite complex. You not only need to take care that everything is like updating in a certain like matter of time, or at a certain like point at 6 a.m, for example. You also need to take care of, if something fails, what's happening then? Are the other jobs like continuing to run, or are they stopping, and is everything then tried again? And if not, who is getting contacted, how do I like find a solution for that. So this is a complex process at the end. So and you need to be aware that if you build, for example, the orchestration yourself, then you should at least have all those things in mind. Yeah? And I think that's definitely worth a complete extra episode of build your own orchestration, because there are a lot of things to handle.
Are we missing anything on this broad overview of transformation and orchestration?
Let's maybe put a quick summary of that. So transforming data and orchestrating data, if you start with your first project, probably the best way is to find a tool for that, where you can put everything together, which is then also capable of orchestrating everything, running everything, and write the results somewhere so you can analyze that. If you have a bigger team of people who maybe did that already, or you have an agency, or you have a big team inside your company, then it's probably, I would not say best to do it yourself, but it gives a little bit of extra flexibility in certain cases. But on the other side, it's also a lot of more work. Yeah, this you also have to see the other side of the medal.
This is another part of our series of data warehousing. If you want to continue listening to more, we have more videos in this YouTube playlist and this channel. And looking forward to hear from you.